Cleopatra. You hear the name and you probably picture this legendary beauty, right? A seductive queen who had Rome's most powerful men wrapped around her finger. But what if I told you that story, the one we all know, is mostly a work of fiction? We're going to dive into the life of the very last pharaoh of Egypt because, trust me, her real story is so much more brilliant than the myth.
You know, we think of her as this absolute knockout, but ancient historians like Plutarch here, they tell a completely different story. They're way more focused on her charisma, her voice, her mind. This quote is really our first big clue. It's hinting that the image we have of Cleopatra might just be a very carefully crafted illusion. So, if she wasn't just a pretty face, then who was she?
And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Was she a femme fatale using her charm to get whatever she wanted? Or was she a genius political operator playing an incredibly high-stakes game of survival against a massive rising empire?
Well, here's the thing. The real Cleopatra was an absolutely formidable leader, a skilled politician, and a fiercely intelligent ruler. And the myth, the one we know today, it wasn't some simple misunderstanding. No, it was a deliberate story, a narrative that was crafted by her greatest enemy to justify her complete and total destruction. So, if her power didn't come from her beauty, where did it come from? It came from her mind, her intellect. That was her true weapon, and let me tell you, it was sharper than any sword in the Roman legions.
Yeah, this really cuts right to the heart of it. The myth paints her as this irresistible seductress. The reality? She was basically the CEO of a nation. She used her sharp-as-a-tack intellect to negotiate alliances and protect her people. What we call seductions, they were really masterclasses in international diplomacy.
And get this number just brilliantly illustrates her intellectual firepower. 9. That's how many languages Cleopatra could speak fluently. And here's the kicker. She was the only ruler in her 300-year-old Greek dynasty who even bothered to learn the native Egyptian language. Can you imagine the diplomatic advantage that gave her? No need for interpreters. She could speak directly to foreign leaders and to her own subjects. It was a game changer.
And it wasn't just about languages. She was a skilled economist who actually reformed Egypt's entire currency. She was a naval commander, a sharp administrator, and honestly a marketing genius. She branded herself as the living embodiment of the goddess Isis, creating this powerful personal connection with the Egyptian people. This was not a woman relying on her looks. This was a polymath running an entire country.
So let's talk about her famous relationships, because this is where it all comes together. We think of them as these epic love stories, right? But for Cleopatra, they were, first and foremost, about survival. They were cold, calculated moves in a geopolitical chess game for the future of her kingdom.
This timeline just lays it all out so clearly. Her alliance with Julius Caesar, that wasn't just some whirlwind romance. It was a strategic masterstroke that secured her throne after her own brother tried to kick her out. And her partnership with Mark Antony, that was a massive military and political pact designed to counter the growing power of his rival Octavian. Every single move had a purpose.
So here's the crucial point, right? Cleopatra was the leader of this incredibly rich but also very vulnerable kingdom, and she was caught right in the crossfire of Rome's brutal civil wars. Aligning herself with Rome's most powerful men was pretty much the only way to keep Egypt from being swallowed whole. Her relationships were her foreign policy.
Okay, this brings us to another huge misconception: her identity. Who was she, really, and where did she come from? Well, the answer is probably a little more complex than you think.
A lot of people just assume Cleopatra was Egyptian, but in reality, her family, the Ptolemies, they were Macedonian Greek. They were descended from one of Alexander the Great's top generals who took over Egypt about 300 years earlier. So yeah, she was about as Greek as Alexander himself. But, and this is a huge but, here's what made her so unique. Unlike all of her ancestors who kind of kept themselves culturally separate, Cleopatra fully embraced Egyptian culture. She learned the language, she took part in their religious ceremonies, and she presented herself as a true pharaoh. She may have been Greek by blood, but she made herself Egyptian by choice, and of course, by political necessity.
So if she was this brilliant, multilingual, strategic ruler, why do we remember her as a temptress? The answer lies in what is quite possibly one of the most successful and ruthless propaganda campaigns in all of history.
Her enemy, the cold, calculating Roman leader Octavian, used propaganda as his #1 weapon. See, he understood that to win the war on the battlefield, he first had to win the war of public opinion. He had to completely destroy her reputation before he could ever destroy her kingdom.
And this is exactly how he did it. It's like a playbook. First, he painted his rival, Mark Antony, not as a political opponent, but as this weak Roman man who'd been corrupted by some foreign sorceress. Second, he demonized Cleopatra herself. He cast her as this decadent, power-hungry threat to Roman morality. And just like that, a Roman civil war became a patriotic war against a foreign enemy. And of course, after she was gone, his version of the story became the only version. History, as they say, was written by the victor.
So after their final, crushing defeat, Cleopatra's story comes to its tragic and, well, pretty mysterious end. Octavian's forces took Alexandria, and the last pharaoh of Egypt was completely cornered.
The most famous story, the one that Shakespeare made immortal, is that she committed suicide by letting an asp, an Egyptian cobra, and a powerful symbol of royalty bite her. I mean, it's a dramatic, defiant, and very pharaonic way to go out.
But other ancient accounts suggest a totally different method. Maybe a fast-acting poison, some kind of toxic mixture that could have been hidden in something as simple as a hairpin. It would have been a much quicker, more certain death. And then there's the most chilling possibility of all. What if it wasn't suicide? I mean, think about it. Octavian needed her gone. Parading her through Rome in chains would have been humiliating for her, for sure. But a living, breathing rival is always a threat. Could her death have been a final, convenient move by her conqueror? We'll probably never know for sure.
But in the end, the how didn't really matter. The result was exactly the same. The Ptolemaic dynasty was over after 300 years. Egypt was completely absorbed into the Roman Empire, and its brilliant final queen was remade into a caricature that served the man who defeated her.
You know, Cleopatra's story is such a powerful reminder that history is often just a narrative, and it's shaped by those who have the power to write it. It really forces us to ask a pretty crucial question. How many other stories have we learned, and how many other figures have we judged based on a version of events told by their enemies?
Subscribe for more videos like this.